Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this exciting multilingual Education for All campaign launch. We will begin our webinar shortly, but before we begin, we want to provide a quick overview of how to use live interpretation and translated closed captioning in this webinar. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce New Voice Interpreting.
To access interpretation today, click on the globe icon that says Interpretation. Haga clic en el icono del globo terráqueo que dice Interpretación. Select your preferred language. Seleccione su idioma preferido. From a smart device, select More. Desde un dispositivo inteligente, seleccione More o Más. Select Language Interpretation. Seleccione Interpretación de idiomas. And select your preferred language from there. Y seleccione su idioma preferido.
好的，大家晚上好那现在呢，就简单的讲一下如何挑选这个中文翻译首先呢，就是在这个地球仪里面点击 Interpretation， 然后呢，挑选呢你希望收听的语言。如果呢你使用的是一个智能手机的话呢，请在你的手机上面呢点击 More， 然后呢再挑选你想要收听的语言。Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Marta Hernandez of Californians Together, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the launch of the Multilingual Education for All campaign. Today is more than a webinar. Today marks the beginning of a 10-year journey, a collective commitment to who we are as California and who we are determined to become. To help open this historic moment, we are honored to share a message from someone whose career has been defined by expanding opportunity for working families, immigrant communities, and students. Former U.S. Secretary of Labor and current chair of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, Hilda Solis.
Hi, I'm Hilda Solis, chair of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors representing the 1st District. I'm honored to be a part of the launch of this important campaign for a multilingual schooling system in California. Our state is one of the most linguistically and culturally diverse places in the world. Nearly half of our students grow up speaking a language other than English at home, and that diversity is not a challenge to overcome. It is a strength to nurture. When students are able to learn in and develop their home language, while gaining strong English skills, they are more engaged, more confident, and more successful. Yet, too many of our students are still denied consistent access to high-quality, multilingual, and dual language programs. And if we're going to be serious about equity, opportunity, and preparing California's future leaders, we must make multilingual education a core feature of our public education system, from early childhood through graduation. This campaign represents a shared commitment to honor our students, to invest in their full potential, and to build schools that reflect the realities and the values of our communities. And I applaud Californians Together and all of the partners involved for leading this vision forward. También quiero decir unas palabras en español. En California, muchas familias hablan más de un idioma en casa. Esto es algo bueno. Cuando apoyamos a los estudiantes para aprender en 2 idiomas, ellos aprenden mejor. Se sienten más seguros y más orgullosos de quienes son. También se conectan mejor con sus familias y sus comunidades. El bilingüismo es una fuerza para nuestros niños, para nuestras familias y para el futuro de California.
And so we thank Supervisor Solis for those powerful and inspiring words. And as she highlighted, California has always been defined by diversity, creativity, and openness to the world. We are a state shaped by migration, languages, cultures, and ideas, from indigenous communities to generations of newcomers to families whose roots stretch across the globe. Today, more than 40% of California students speak a language other than English at home. Our classrooms reflect the languages of the world. And this is not a challenge to overcome. This is a strength to develop. In a global and interconnected world, multilingualism is not optional. It is essential. And yet, too often, our education systems treat multilingualism as something to fix rather than something to cultivate. California has already shown national leadership. We created the Seal of Biliteracy. We adopted the English Learner Roadmap. We launched Global California 2030. And still, access to high quality multilingual education remains uneven. Too many students, especially English learners and students from immigrant communities, are denied sustained opportunities to become bilingual and biliterate. We know better, and when we know better, we must do better. So this campaign was built through more than 2 years of statewide dialogue with educators, advocates, researchers, and community partners. It reflects the wisdom, urgency, and hope of multiple organizations working together, not in silos, but in solidarity. This is not about one organization or one voice. This is about a shared vision rooted in collaboration, collective action, and long-term commitment. We know that bilingualism strengthens identity and belonging. It expands cognitive flexibility. It opens doors to college, careers, civic leadership, and global connection. So this work prepares students not just to succeed in school, but to lead in the world they are inheriting. That is why today matters. Today we are clearly and collectively saying it is time to make multilingualism a reality for all students, not as an add-on, but as a core promise of public education in California. And so, to help ground this campaign in research, policy, and lived experience, it is my honor to introduce 3 leaders whose work has helped to shape this movement. First, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ilana Umansky, a nationally respected researcher whose work has reshaped how we understand English learner identification, reclassification, and long-term outcomes. She is a contributing author to 2 landmark UCLA Civil Rights Project reports, research that helped lay the foundation for this campaign. Dr. Umansky is Associate Professor of Education Policy and Leadership at the University of Oregon. Next, I am honored to introduce Dr. Melissa Castillo, a national leader in English learner education. She previously served in the U.S. Department of Education's Office of English Language Acquisition, OELA, and as Associate Superintendent of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for the Arizona Department of Education. Her career spans dual language classroom teaching, coaching, district leadership, and national consulting, bringing powerful practitioner expertise to multilingual systems change. And finally, it is truly an honor to introduce Dr. Lori Olson, whose decades of visionary leadership helped shape California's multilingual education movement and whose work laid the intellectual and policy foundation for this campaign. In addition to her research and advocacy, Dr. Olson also played a pivotal leadership role in the development and implementation of California's English Learner Roadmap, helping shape one of the nation's most comprehensive policy frameworks supporting multilingual learners. She is also a founder of Californians Together and has served as a dedicated board member since its inception. This campaign stands on the shoulders of her work. So please join me in welcoming these extraordinary leaders, and I hand it off to Dr. Umansky, who will address the research and rationale for multilingual education. Ilana?
Thank you so much, Martha, and thanks to everyone for being here today. It's such an honor to be here with this incredible panel and with each of you for this important launch. So my job today is the easy one. I'm here to remind all of us of the overwhelming evidence of the benefits of bilingual education. As a professor and researcher interested in how school systems can support multilingual students, studying the effects of bilingual education and following the research of others on this topic is something that I'm really passionate about. I imagine most of you are already familiar with this research and the rationale behind bilingual education, but still, it's very meaningful to remind ourselves of just how important this multilingual education for all campaign is. Much of what I'm going to talk about today is synthesized in two recent reports put out by the Civil Rights Project at UCLA. I want to thank Patricia Gandara and Gary Orfield, co-directors of the project, as well as my co-authors on these two reports, including Lorna Porter, Manuel Vasquez Cano, Connor Williams, and Jonathan Zavala. The effectiveness of bilingual education, a general term that encompasses a number of different program designs, has been the subject of research for several decades. Research from the past 10 to 15 years, however, has benefited from significant developments in research methods and data. These methods allow us to be very confident in both what the direct effects of these programs are and how these effects might differ for different groups of students or over different periods of time. So as a result, we can say some things very confidently. First of all, we know that on average, bilingual programs have a positive effect on students' academic achievement. These positive effects, one example of which is this study from Jennifer Steele and colleagues in Portland Public Schools, run across multiple subjects, including English language arts, math, and science. And in many cases, these academic benefits are quite large in size. The research also clearly shows that students in bilingual programs are more likely, not less likely, to develop full English proficiency and be exited or reclassified out of English learner status. An example of these results is on the right and comes from a study of mine with Sean Reardon from a California district. As can be seen here, linguistic benefits of bilingual education are oftentimes not immediate. They accrue over time, appearing in late elementary and early middle school. Importantly, the increased availability of language proficiency tests in non-English languages, such as California's Spanish language arts tests, allow us to state confidently, and should I mention unsurprisingly, that bilingual education also supports students' maintenance of and development of the partner non-English language. An example of this research is by Burkhauser and colleagues shown here. This study showed Spanish language growth among dual language program participants across all 4 domains of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Importantly, it also found this growth for students whose home language was Spanish and amongst students whose home language was English or another language. We know that the power of education and multilingualism is not just about test scores, even if those test scores are measuring things that we care about, like language growth. Increasingly then, studies are looking at how bilingual programs shape other student, school, family, and community outcomes. It's often harder to get measures of these sorts of outcomes at scale, so much of this research is thanks to outstanding qualitative researchers, although increasingly we do have some strong causal estimates in this area. There's a growing body of work that finds that bilingual education supports socio-emotional and socio-cultural outcomes. For example, a recent study by De Jong and colleagues found that English learner students in a middle school dual language program had a strong sense of belonging in school, a sense of belonging that helped support them at times of transition, such as from elementary to secondary, as well as a buffer for them from the wider school culture that at times perpetuated monolingual attitudes and hierarchies. Other key socio-emotional benefits include a deeper valuation of oneself and one's bilingualism, and a greater sense of self-efficacy and confidence. Additionally, bilingual education often supports sociocultural growth, including intergenerational communication, connection to family and culture, and greater family involvement in classrooms and schools. The graph shown here on the right, for example, shows the growing number of Navajo parents who started coming to education advisory meetings once a school in New Mexico created a Navajo heritage language immersion program. Finally, growing evidence indicates positive benefits of bilingual education on longer-term outcomes, including high school graduation and enrollment in college. Studies have documented how EL classified students who participate in longer-term bilingual education programs have higher scores on college entrance exams than ELs in other programs, and that students that maintain these high levels of bilingualism have a lower likelihood of dropping out of high school and a higher likelihood of enrolling in post-secondary education. Multilingualism and multilingual education supports all students, but it's particularly important for students coming from multilingual families, and especially for students classified in school as English learners. Bilingual education, which has a long, rich history in the US, is fundamentally rooted in these students and these communities. The origins of bilingual education lies in efforts of multilingual and immigrant communities to support their children and maintain their cultures and histories. Many of the benefits that I've talked about so far are particularly important for these students. For example, multilingual students uniquely benefit from developing and maintaining their heritage language and their home language. One refrain I've heard so often from students in these programs is, "I can talk to my grandparents." These students uniquely benefit by learning the value of their language and culture in a wider society that, as we are seeing so painfully today, oftentimes devalues their communities and their histories. We know, too, that students classified as English learners in California, as is the case across the country, face large and impactful barriers to opportunity and excellence in school. Barriers that result in wide achievement gaps between EL classified and non-EL classified students. Bilingual programs help close these gaps. They do so by designing for excellence with this population in mind, centering these students in a way that is often largely absent in other types of programs. And finally, some studies indicate that multilingual and EL classified students experience larger academic gains than their non-EL peers in these same programs. I want to reiterate that all students benefit from bilingual education, yet some studies, such as a recent study out of Utah shown here, again by Steele and colleagues, showed that students whose home language matched the partner language had unique academic benefits in both math and English language arts. As I mentioned earlier, multilingual education takes different forms, and these different forms have different goals and different outcomes. But a sustained focus on quality is paramount to all program models. I'll briefly synthesize what I consider just a few key points on a few key messages on this point. First, becoming bilingual and biliterate takes time. Short-term programs cannot be expected to support full bilingualism, even if they have important benefits for students. To achieve California's goal of graduating students proficient in more than one language, California will need to build programs that extend into and through secondary grades. Second, there are certainly unique benefits to programs that serve exclusively partner language speakers. But we also know that isolating EL classified students that oftentimes face intersectional discrimination related to their language, race, culture, and socioeconomic status, can lead to perpetuating inequities and opportunity barriers. Integrating EL students while centering their needs and experiences creates authentic opportunities for language learning, collaboration, and building friendships and understanding. Finally, and most importantly, bilingual programs are not possible and quality programs laughable without teachers and leaders who are knowledgeable about and committed to multilingual education and who have the resources that they need to create excellent learning environments for their students. I'll close just by reminding us, as my esteemed colleague Martha did, and others on the panel will do, that California is multilingual and needs multilingualism. We are a state, and note I'm using we here because while I live in Oregon, California is my forever home. where 40% of K-12 students and 60% of kids under 5 live in multilingual families. Connor Williams and colleagues just published a report that showed that 94% of families with multilingual children believe that it's very important for their children to maintain their primary language. Over half of English monolingual families shared this goal of multilingualism for their children. And interest in multilingual education in California is high across all demographic groups, as is shown in this table from that report. Families value multilingual programs for the promise these programs have for the future of their children, as well as their communities and the wider state. I'll now turn it over to Melissa Castillo, who will speak to us more about these broad economic and social benefits.
Gracias, Dr. Lumansky, for that information and that wonderful research. Good afternoon, everyone. It is so wonderful to be here and be a part of something that will surely have enormous impact on students, families, and communities, not only in California, but across the nation. We knew 3 years ago at the U.S. Department of Education that California was a state that we needed to research, visit, and learn from to better promote and act on Secretary Dr. Miguel Cardona's vision for creating pathways to multilingualism for all. With that vision cut short, I'm thrilled that California leaders and experts focused on multilingual learners continue to lead the way in what they clearly understood long ago, that multilingualism matters first and foremost for English learners, but also for all learners. With approximately 1.2 million English learners, the diverse communities across the state, and its global influence, economic influence, no state is better positioned to message, advocate, and act on multilingualism for all. California has historically led the way and provided education models for the nation to learn from, leverage, and follow. The SIL of Biliteracy program, which began in 2012, is one example. The SIL of Biliteracy program recognizes high school graduates who have attained high levels in proficiency in reading, writing, listening, and speaking in one or more languages other than English. Because of California's efforts recognizing and rewarding young people for their fluency in more than 22 languages, 12 years later, in the spring of 2024, we were excited at the national level to celebrate that all 50 states and the District of Columbia were offering the SIL of Biliteracy, officially encouraging and distinguishing the value of language proficiency in multiple languages. And in school year 2022-23, there were over 153,000 total SIL of Biliteracy awards reported. In 2019, the Global California 2030 initiative was updated and published by the Department of Education. Another example of how California educators and leaders understand the importance of language, and as their mission states, that we must equip students with the world language skills to better appreciate and more fully engage with the rich and diverse mixture of cultures, heritages, and languages found in California and the world, while also preparing them to succeed in the global economy. Most important, I believe in this initiative and the understanding that a focus on language works in tandem with the statewide focus on literacy and the achievement gap, which impacts all students, especially our English learners. California's commitment to multilingualism will not only be important for California, but for the rest of the nation as education systems work to respond to what the workforce has made clear in terms of demands of language. We know that 90%, we know that 90% of US employers rely on language skills. We also know that 56% say that there is a demand for language, and that this demand for language will increase in the next 5 years. 47% of states have noted a need for language skills exclusively for their domestic market. And 1 in 4 US employers have lost businesses due to a lack of language skills. Yet, with all the work that has been done, there is still much to do. Enrollment in language studies has been consistently declining in 2008. And we know that less than 20% or 10.6 million K-12 students and about 7.5% of undergraduate and graduate students in the US study a world language. What is important, however, is that we know California is not alone in these efforts to create programs for multilingualism for all. At the national level, we also learned that although California is often more advanced, they are not alone when it comes to knowing the critical need for language programs that center English learners, taking an asset-based approach that leans into and leverages their language, culture, funds of knowledge, and that can and does support a vision for multilingualism for all. For example, Utah has a robust state-sponsored dual language immersion programs for grades K through 12 and supports with funding, staffing, and professional learning. In 2024, the Utah State Legislature passed House Bill 161, which appropriated over $2 million to schools for the implementation of dual language immersion programs, and over $778,000 to the University of Utah as an ongoing appropriation to provide training and support for educators. The Rhode Island Department of Education created the Blueprint for Multilingual Learner Success, which outlines the necessary elements of programs to support students, especially English learners, in being successful in school. Texas is another example. A half-century of mandatory statewide bilingual education has contributed to Texas's long-standing linguistic diversity, both in the state's pre-K-12 schools and in its teacher preparation programs. The state recently changed its EL funding formula, providing additional resources to districts that enrolled in dual language immersion programs. Next slide. Chicago works with local public schools to identify promising paraprofessionals and parents, and then partners with local teacher preparation programs to help them obtain certification. The Illinois State Board of Education also has a robust bilingual parent advisory committee focused on helping bilingual families and community members better understand how bilingual programming works so they may advocate for the academic needs of their students. The Connecticut State Board of Education enacted a written Bill of Rights for parents or guardians of students who are multilingual learners to guarantee the rights of each of such families and that their students are safeguarded and protected. These are just some of the examples and commitments states have made with legislation, monetary investments, teacher recruitment and preparation, and family engagement that California can build from and draw upon. And finally, next slide, please. In closing, we know that the nation is ready. We recognize that being multilingual and multiliterate is an educational and economic imperative for all our classrooms and communities, not just the state of California, but we know that they will, like they often have, lead the way. And we also know that fluency in multiple languages unlocks the opportunity for students to succeed academically, economically, and connect with diverse communities and cultures, that they look at the world with more empathy and understanding of different perspectives, all of which enriches and advances a society economically, culturally, and socially. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the visionary of this wonderful campaign, Dr. Lori Olson.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you to Alana, and welcome everybody. I'm thrilled that we have arrived at this day. California has led before. We are not alone, as Melissa was just saying, but we have a really important and essential role to play right now. This is our moment to step up, to say with pride and with urgency, we are a wonderfully culturally and linguistically diverse state, and we need a schooling system that leverages that diversity, that embraces and honors who we are, and that acts upon what we know works and what we know really matters. We've already done a lot of work digging ourselves out of the 20 years of English only Prop 227 era and beginning to shape a policy context here in our state that does support multilingualism to some degree. Melissa already mentioned the Seal of Biliteracy, Global California 2030, and of course, our English Learner Roadmap policy that makes asset-based commitment prominently stated as principle number one. But still, we're not where we need to be, are we? Still, the vast majority of English learners are in subtractive English-only instruction, losing their home languages. Still, the desire and demand for dual language immersion programs exceeds program capacity and availability. Still, too soon those whose family and community and heritage languages differ from academic English face major barriers to access in school and harmful biases against the languages they speak. And still, it falls to just dumb luck which school and which district a student happens to enroll in that determines whether or not they're going to have any opportunities to develop multilingualism. And so, over the past years of dialogue and thinking and strategizing, as Martha described at the beginning, we've begun to conceptualize a campaign for California to really create a system of multilingual education for all people, and for all schools. A schooling system in which affirmation of multilingualism is a permeating value, in which the development of multilingualism is a signature feature of California education, all the way from early education through graduation. A system in which every student is engaged in some form of language study of two or more languages, and in which multiple multiliteracy and multilingual program and delivery options are available that fit the different contexts, the tremendous diversity of our state, the very different language communities and needs that we have. We are a very diverse state. And a schooling system in which we guarantee that dual language immersion biliteracy programs are the standard program for all English learners. So that's a big ask. That's a big wish. That's a big vision. It's described in this document, the framework for our campaign. But it's not just a vision. We have a plan for how to get there. We are looking at building from the instructional and curriculum level and in the classrooms to create the classrooms that'll affirm and value and leverage our students' languages and cultures, that'll build the multilingual attitudes and competencies and skills for all young people that are learning to make sense of and live in this richly, complexly diverse state, and that will engage students in joyful, intellectually rich, I'll say that again, intellectually rich learning in and through those multiple languages. We are seeking to establish schools that support and honor and celebrate multilingualism and emerging dual language skills and the linguistic genius of multilingual students. We are looking to build beyond just schools, to build entire communities in which families are active and powerful in their partnership with schools and in their leadership that'll really support our students to develop the language and cultural identities for all of their language and cultural worlds. All of this in communities that seek and utilize and prize the skills and competencies of multiliterate and cross-culturally competent young people who are intellectually on fire and
so that we can be a state, California, proudly owning our identity as a multilingual state and investing in our youth so that we can really thrive based on the energy and skills of those young people who are speaking and hearing and engaging and connecting within and across language and cultural borders. We need to be a state that can really utilize and support and honor and thrive because we have such skilled, knowledgeable young people emboldened to share their dreams, their voices, their experiences with the world in multiple languages. So our campaign is seeking to make that real. We are saying this is the time, folks. We are multilingual. We're going to build a schooling system that does all of this, that mirrors who we are. We're going to build the schools that our state needs. And we're going to do that by writing, championing, and passing a comprehensive policy framework and a state commitment that'll give this vision life. We know that passing a comprehensive policy is no easy task. And it requires that we not only write the policy, which in itself, of course, is a big lift, but that we build very strong support, a strong narrative and demand for that. And we know that even once a policy is passed, it becomes just a hollow promise or pretty words on a page, or worse, a recipe for backlash, unless we're also paying attention to building the capacity, the infrastructure, and the resources that are needed to give it life and see it implemented. And so we are approaching this as a multi-year campaign that takes into consideration how long it takes and how much it's going to take. By 2028, we're seeking to procure a formal state legislative commitment to enact this schooling system, along with a commitment to specific benchmarks, investments, and timelines to phase in implementation with the goal of full implementation by 2035. So let's hope we're all around to see that happen, right? The campaign involves a whole set of strategies to make this happen. And those strategies include, besides the multi-year long-term kind of time frame and set of steps, I have to go back one. It also includes an emphasis on collective impact, an emphasis on local and regional campaigns. And by the way, those of you who've been around for the Seal of Biliteracy years of building that, we built that district by district, community by community, until we had the examples, the voices, the leverage throughout the state to push for the legislative and finally the governor signature to make that a reality. So collective impact is huge. We're going to be infusing multilingualism as a value and a presence across all education initiatives. We're going to use it kind of like a lens through which we look at new initiatives. What's its impact on our multilingual state and multilingualism? We're going to be working to advance public awareness and understanding and demand through shared narrative and messaging campaigns. We're going to be building local and state capacity and working on all of those levels at the same time, creating and providing tools for all of that to happen, as well as the development of local policies that become the bright spots and the big call to everybody for what this could be. We're going to be mobilizing leaders for multilingual schools across sectors. So that includes business and economic and entertainment and labor, across the people of the state, speaking to why multilingual skills, why multilingual understandings, why multilingual proficiency matters for who we are as a state. And we're going to work by supporting and moving with the willing first and building momentum from there. So that's a picture of some of the strategies. And again, it's all explained, or not all explained, but somewhat explained in that document. The structure is under the facilitation and guidance of Californians Together, the large coalition and partner organizations working through a coordinating council. But also the deep work is happening through working groups that are focusing on understanding each of these components of what a multilingual system is going to need to be, looking at what are the options out there, what are some recommended policies, how are other people handling it, what does the research say, what's the dialogue across our different contexts of the state and different perspectives. And so there's one working on the framework and principles and indicators, and another working on diverse models for diverse contexts, recognizing that it can't look the same everywhere. It shouldn't look the same everywhere. Working on parent-family involvement and community engagement and leadership. There's one that's really focusing on how are we going to fund this? How are we going to find the resources to make this possible? There's a working group on the state infrastructure, county infrastructure, district infrastructure. What does that leadership and that set of roles and supports need to look like in the state to give this life? What's the accountability and the assessment system? And I saw some comments or questions about that already. There will be a working group on multilingual educator workforce, building the leadership, the teachers, the staffing that we need. And there's one specifically looking at early childhood education. So those working groups are where the ideas are going to be generated, brought back to the overall council, and really putting together this policy that we're going to go for that state commitment in just a few years. It's a lot of work to do, and that's why we need you. We need all of us. We need our voices, our best thinking, our action, our examples across the state to give this reality. And I'm going to turn it over to Leah now to tell you how you can be involved.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olson. I see so many people reacting in the chat, and it feels like everyone's feeling how I'm feeling. I am feeling excited. I am feeling energized, and I am feeling ready to make multilingual education for all a reality. So, who should get involved and how? So, like the campaign states, it is meant for all. So if you're a student, a teacher, a district administrator, counselor, school staff that's excited about this vision for California schools, if you're a school board member committed to policies and systems that ensure every student has access to a high quality multilingual education, if you're a parent, an aunt, an uncle that's yearning for an education for your child, your niece, your nephew that prepares them for our global world, if you're in the business industry, or if you're in business or an industry leader who really understands that California's future workforce depends on multilingualism, cross-cultural competence, and educational equity, or if you're a university professor, recognizing the challenge of building a teacher workforce for our state that can provide the strongest possible education for our multilingual students, we want you to be involved. So how can we get started on getting involved? The best way to start, remember this is our launch, the best way to do this is by joining our campaign on the official Multilingual Education for All website, MLE4All.org. By joining our campaign, you'll receive updates, learn about ways you can get involved locally, and opportunities to share your stories for us to hear your stories, your knowledge, and experiences. Also on this website, you'll find some key campaign information that we heard about, such as the vision, the goals, and that framework we shared with you. Also, to receive some more updates about this campaign, please follow us on our official live LinkedIn and Instagram pages. You will get some key updates there as well, in addition to if you join our campaign. So those are ways we can get started, just started on how to get involved. But to continue this momentum and excitement about this campaign and get an idea of some things you might find on our social media, I'm going to show you guys a video where we hear directly from the Voices of California, where they're talking all about the importance of multilingualism.
California Teachers Association President David Goldberg, y es mi honor de hacer este video porque yo sé que Californians Together siempre han luchado para defender los derechos lingüísticos de los estudiantes de California. I saw that as a bilingual elementary school teacher in Boyle Heights. I was aware of your great work. I also know the importance of it as having grown up with a deaf sister. And so we are here, California Teachers Association is here to support your work all the way.
你咪喺度搞搞震冇幫襯啦。In my home language, some words don't even show up in the English dictionary. These words are packed with history, culture, the vibes, and moods. So translation can't just add up. In general, language is deeply tied with culture and community. So, allowing multilingual in a classroom means that students can connect and explore in a safe and cultural space where they feel less colonized, both in the traditional and modern way. And that is a human right everyone should have access to.
Hello, I'm Dr. Susan Heredia. Multilingualism, why is it important? It's the moment a child dares to speak, finding their voice in another language. It's the undeniable proof when multilingual learners shatter all expectations and rise. Multilingualism is important because when every voice is valued, every future is stronger.
El multilingüismo importa porque abre puertas, une a nuestras comunidades y fortalece el futuro de nuestros estudiantes. Mi lengua materna me ha moldeado a través de mis raíces, mis valores y la conexión con mi familia. Y esto es lo que sucede cuando los estudiantes se sienten orgullosos de sus idiomas, florecen, participan más y se sienten vistos, valorados y capaces de lograr todo. California prospera cuando celebramos todos los idiomas y culturalmente apoyamos a cada estudiante. Gracias.
Multilingualism is a superpower. El multilingüismo es un superpoder.
Parlare diverse lingue è un superpotere.
Le multilinguisme est un super pouvoir.
Nói được nhiều ngôn ngữ là một lợi thế.
What's your superpower?
Multilingualism matters for a lot of reasons. Of course, there's the educational and cognitive benefits, the social and the economic benefits. I think it makes us better members of community. I think it makes us more empathetic. And the reason that multilingualism matters to me personally is that it allows me to create a bridge from the past into the future, reclaiming my roots and using that as a lever for opportunity and social engagement.
And so with that, I first want to thank our three amazing and inspirational speakers, Ilana, Melissa, and Lori. You all rock. Thank you so much. I think it's evident that today we are doing more than launching a campaign. Today we are really honoring generations of families, educators, advocates, and students who have fought to ensure that language is seen as an asset and not a barrier. Today, we are naming a shared belief about who we are and who we choose to be. So, as Lori, called us to action, let us build the schools that reflect who we are as Californians and the future we want for our children. A future where languages are celebrated, where students are fully seen and fully heard and fully empowered, where multilingualism is not the exception, but the expectation. This campaign stands on decades of courage, scholarship, and community leadership. And today we take the next step in that legacy. What can I say? Anyway, so this is the beginning of a 10-year journey, and it will be shaped by all of us, by our voices, our partnerships, by our courage, by our collective action. So today we invite you to walk forward with us. Champion multilingual education in your schools. Lift up this vision in your communities. Help us build a movement that reflects the brilliance, diversity, and promise of California's students. I want to thank you for showing up. Thank you for believing in this vision. And thank you for helping ensure that the next generation grows up in schools that honor every language, every culture, and every child. And so with that, I say, gracias, salamat, merci, obrigada, dhanvad, and thank you. Thank you for standing with us.